Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial is set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Hour number 1 is with Kevin. We're going to be talking about appliances, appliance repairs, do-it-yourself repairs, those kinds of things. Hour number 2, Cathy and saving money at the homestead or domestic money saving. Welcome, Kevin.
Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning. Had a couple quick questions or a couple quick thoughts. And they are, I sent you an email about this, repair versus replace. So dishwasher, dryer, washer, refrigerator, freezer. What goes into that decision from your customer's perspective? So they've got an appliance that's not working right, like a dishwasher, dryer, washer, refrigerator, freezer, and it's on the fritz, it's not working right. What goes into, well, Kevin, I'm trying to decide whether we should fix it or we should get one of those new shiny, substandard Chinese models?
That's the most common question I hear. My general rule of thumb, depending on the condition, is if the repair cost is going to be more than, let's say, half of what it might cost to replace it entirely, I'd probably lean towards replacing it and shopping around. Now, we also have to take into consideration a lot of these big box stores distribute from a different place, and it could take weeks to get your refrigerator replaced. So people also are concerned about that right now. But depending on the condition, as long as it's not all beat up and just worn down, broken control panel parts, which control panels are expensive and usually proprietary to the model. Usually, let's say a dishwasher might cost $500 or $600 on a low end. Most repairs are under $300, and I find over that price, the customer wants to think about it, and about half the time they do want to get the repair anyways, just to save the time and just the hassle.
What do you find with dishwashers in terms of the racks? I'm talking about that slide-in, slide-out rack that is made out of steel, covered with vinyl, that you put your dishes in. I'm not talking about the tool basket where you put your, knives, forks, spoons, cutlery, etc. I'm just talking about the rack that holds your dishes and bowls and pots and pans and things like that. Do you find that your customers say, you know what, this thing is rusty and it's kind of chipping the edges of the dishes? Do you provide or sell them replacement racks, or are they not concerned about that?
Well, honestly, it doesn't seem like the ones that have been made in the last 5 or 10 years last long enough to actually rust the racks. Like the older GEs that Kenmore branded, I still see those, and sometimes those racks are rusted out. But I am seeing a lot of upper racks, especially by Whirlpool, where these plastic wheels that are used to support a dozen or more mugs and bowls break pretty easily. And then they probably break the dishes, too. So I don't see a lot of the rust racks anymore, so to speak. I have had to replace those, and they make the little caps for the tips of them. But now I'm seeing a lot of broken plastic rollers that the racks rely on due to poor engineering, like we keep running back into.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've seen that. I haven't seen the wheels break on our dishwasher. Now, we had a General Electric brand dishwasher that failed after about maybe 12 years. The rack rusted through, and I went to eBay and I bought some liquid vinyl repair. There's like a thick paint, comes in maybe a half an ounce bottle, and it has a brush in the cap, and you clean the rack, you get the soap residue off it, maybe sand or file some of the rust off those spots that are rusted, and you paint this on. And it works for a short time, maybe 6 months, maybe. And what I realized was the exactly as you said, that General Electric brand rack was substandard. Now, if you want to replace the rack, you can do that. You can buy a new rack, except the rack is about $135. Where when you bought that dishwasher in the first place, it was maybe a little more than twice as expensive as just the rack replacement, right? It was about maybe $300 when you bought the new dishwasher, and now the rack is about half the price of what you spent for the dishwasher. So I decided that this thing cleaned. It did a lousy job of cleaning, and it had one of those rotating spray arms, and that thing would get plugged up with pieces of plastic, the vinyl that dislodged from the rack. And so after, cleaning it, using, taking it apart, flushing it, finally decided I just don't want to deal with this thing anymore. And I found a used Whirlpool, and I love it. It's a real plain Jane, it's a Kenmore Whirlpool, and it is fabulous. So and it must be at least 10 years old, the one that I found to replace the 10-year-old General Electric. But I found that Whirlpool is way better than General Electric, appliance for appliance, whether it be a stove, a washing machine, or a dishwasher. And have you found the same thing, that General Electric is substandard compared to Whirlpool?
Yes, and especially now that they were bought out by a Chinese company called Haier, they've really gone downhill, and parts availability is pretty difficult.
Okay. Kevin, do you install garbage disposal units in the sinks?
I do. I do about 2 a month on average. I don't really advertise it, but usually they're not very serviceable. The ones that I recommend are any that have the hex nut in the middle where the axle is underneath, and a red reset button. And that's obviously for when the axle gets jammed up, you can take that Allen wrench that they provide and unjam it. Well, surprisingly to a lot of people, some of them don't have that option.
Wow. So what you're saying is that the axle, the motor shaft, if you will, that's attached to the grinding mechanism, in the garbage disposal, it gets jammed maybe with pieces of fat, maybe with pieces of bone that you didn't think you were putting in there, or maybe you thought maybe bone would be able to be ground up, and it just jams up the motor so that it can't spin. So you have this tool that you can put in there and turn that motor shaft or the axle and dislodge the jam. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And sometimes there is a glass or a screw that may have fallen off the counter or something. So you might have to dislodge that debris first. Obviously, unplug it first, and just be careful reaching around if there is a piece of broken glass.
Now, let's just take a minute and talk about, I've seen people real brave, way more brave than I am. They'll just stick their hand in that garbage disposal and try to dislodge something. I would never do that without first doing a few things. You mentioned make sure that it's shut off. How would you be sure that the power is disconnected to that garbage disposal so you don't put your hand in there and grind off the end of your hand?
Usually they're plugged into an outlet that is connected to a switch, so the outlet power actually gets shut off. So I would just unplug it from the outlet. I don't find them often hardwired into the house, but if they are, go to the breaker, flip the breaker if it's labeled, and then go back and flip the switch, and if it doesn't come on, you're good to go.
Okay. I've got an additional recommendation. So class, in the old days, maybe 25 years ago, garbage disposals would be hardwired in under the sink. So a piece of Romex would come out of the wall under the sink cabinet, the base cabinet, and it would be wired directly to the garbage disposal. So the only way to make sure that electricity was certainly not getting to that garbage disposal would be go to the breaker. I have a non-contact circuit tester, and this thing is like a thick Sharpie marker, and it's all plastic. When it becomes in contact, you don't have to touch the wire per se. You could touch the insulation of the Romex jacket of the wire, and it will go beep, 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 beep if there's electricity present. And I'll tell you what, I don't touch electricity at all anymore unless I make absolutely positively sure that there is no current flowing through that wire. I suggest you consider getting one of those. They're about $2 on eBay. The one I have is yellow and white, has a little button, has a little tip. It uses two AAA cells, and it works great. So before I would work on a garbage disposal unit, I would make sure that it's unplugged if there is a plug. If it's hardwired, I would go to the circuit breaker, but I wouldn't trust the guy or gal who wrote garbage disposal on the circuit breaker panel. I wouldn't trust that. I would verify
agree. That's
that
a great
myself.
point. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anytime we can encourage people to get more tools, absolutely. And
yeah,
that's the safe way to do it.
And this is $2, literally a $2. You'll probably find it for $20, which is way overpriced. I have two of them, and I use them not all the time, but when I want to know if there's alternating current, whether it be 240 volts or 120 volts, and I don't want to remove the receptacle or the switch, I can test it right through. I can test it without contacting any metal wires whatsoever. You can put the tip of this thing, it'll fit right into an electrical socket. It's all plastic, and it will tell you if that outlet is powered up or not. It's a great tool to have. You'll find lots of uses for it, but it only works on AC. We have Arjun calling in. Arjun, I'm going to hold you through this break, and then you can come on with us right after the next break we're going to take. What garbage disposal brands do you like? Let's name some brands that you like, and which ones do you not like?
I like Badger, Incinerator, and Whirlpool. I think Whirlpool is private labeling Badgers or Incinerators. I can't quite tell. They look very similar. But the 1/3 or 1/2 horsepower is a great series for all three of those brands. So Badger, like the animal, Incinerator, and Whirlpool. And usually you can buy those for around $100 at a big box store or, the Amazon.
Okay. Now, there are a lot of people who say, I'm a pretty handy guy. I know how to do a lot of stuff. What I'm finding is that that's really a stretch of the imagination. What level of difficulty would you say removing just a strainer basket from a typical sink and replacing that with a garbage disposal and wiring it? What level of difficulty is that? Is that something the average guy can do, or is it a little above that?
He might spend his afternoon doing it, but it's probably 5 out of 10 difficulty.
Okay, there you go. All right, Kevin and I will be right back. Arjun will put you on as soon as we come back. Class Kevin's with us. He's in Florida, and he is an appliance repair technician. He's also the owner of his own company. And if you decide that you'd like to call, please stay on topic. I do not want to get side-wobbled on philosophical issues. Okay, so stay on topic, please. Arjun in New Jersey, welcome.
Hey, Will. Well, actually, you mentioned this, and actually I wanted to talk about Chinese propaganda. But if you want, I can come back again because we are talking about appliances right now.
Right. Okay. Give us a call another time. We'd be glad to put you on the air, okay?
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, buddy.
Well, LG puts out some great Chinese propaganda under their logo. It says, "Life's good."
And it's better when it'd be better if we could make our appliances work better and last longer. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I had a question. I had and by the way, it used to be called LG Gold Star, and now it's just LG. I had a question for you, Kevin, and it has to do with your business. Now, you were in college and you decided that, you know what, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you were going to put out your own shingle and go into business for yourself. And since you are an expert in going into business for yourself, and I really believe you are because you did it, I've done it too. The point I'm trying to make is some people would say, oh, no. You don't have any security. You don't have any benefits. You got to be crazy to do that. There are the ups and downs of business. You can smooth all that out and have a regular paycheck. What do you say to that, Kevin?
Well, all things considered with the Corona panic, this has been the best job security I could ask for. And it is quite a conundrum these days. I've got 3 daughters, and I don't know how I would have survived off of the helicopter money that Trump dropped down. I've got quite a bit of expenses, but, I wear my mask and I try to be extra safe and everything. But to be honest, this is the longest job I've ever had. So 9 years running, it is job security, working for yourself. You just have to adapt and survive.
And that was the point that I was hoping we'd be able to make in these few minutes. We're talking about, this particular topic of going into business for yourself. Now, I'll tell you this, class. For those who have been indoctrinated that, you work hard in school and you prove yourself and you get a good school resume, and then you look for that job, and then you work really hard for that company, and you work extra hard so you can rise through the ranks. That model's done. It's over. Now, it's very difficult to leave that indoctrination and start your own business, because if you fail, it's your fault. If you succeed, it's your fault. Okay? You are in charge of your own destiny. And just as if Kevin makes mistakes, it's going to cost him money. Okay? It's his fault. And he's the guy that makes the decisions. He's ultimately responsible, and there's nobody else to blame. I mean, he can say LG makes lousy stuff. Yeah, that's true. And they do. But ultimately, he is responsible for his own decisions, just as I am responsible for my own decisions. And I have been an entrepreneur since, maybe 12 years old when I started cutting lawns. But I was living at home, of course, with mom and dad. But I have figured out back in 1980 that actually even before then, that being in business for yourself is absolutely the way to go. And here's the simple question you can ask yourself. And you can prove this to yourself. Of all the people you know, and you know people that I don't know, class. I don't even know you. So, of all the people you know, when you compare the ones who are in business for themselves as compared to the employees, who's doing better? Okay. Now, who are people in business for themselves? That'd be doctors, dentists, lawyers, people who have shops, people who have little manufacturing businesses. All those people whom you know who have businesses for themselves, compare those to employees. Who's doing better? Kevin, is that one way that you looked at it as well?
Absolutely, and that's how a lot of the financial experts and entrepreneur experts like Robert Kiyosaki and Michael Gerber say the same thing. Why would I want to be taxed as an employee when I could make a business and pay myself a little bit out of that business? But, you have to have honesty and integrity, like you always say.
Yeah, and Kevin can buy whatever vehicle he wants to do his business, and it's a tax deduction, just as I can. Any vehicle. We'll be right back. Kevin's with us, and we've been talking about appliances, and I believe Kevin was talking about the horsepower rating of garbage disposals. You mentioned the Badger as a brand. He mentioned In-Sync Aerator, also described as ISE, In-Sync Aerator, as a garbage disposal unit, and Whirlpool. Now, I believe all of those are fine brands, just as Kevin said. And I have seen on the internet, I believe on eBay, Chicom garbage disposals, and they're less expensive. I wouldn't touch one. Kevin, any comments?
I agree. So if you already have one of those brands, most of the body styles are pretty close to what the new ones are. And if you want to save yourself 30 minutes, the flange will adapt to the new one. So you might not have to take that off unless it's leaking. If you notice any signs of water residue coming from the sink below through that flange, replace it. But if you want to save yourself some time, it'll just buy one that's almost identical to that one that you already have and install it right there.
Well said. And what he's talking about is the adapter that adapts the sink bowl to the garbage disposal. And yeah, you will save some time. So, we had, when we lived in Virginia, we had one, and it was before Virginia, InSinkerator, and it was a fabulous unit. It was a 1/2 horsepower. And I believe you mentioned a 1/3 horsepower and a 1/2 horsepower. You did not mention a 1/4 horsepower. That would be the lowest price model in the class. 1/4, then more expensive would be 1/3, then next model up would be 1/2, and then maybe even more than that. Why did you not say 1/4 horsepower?
I just don't really have those offered with my appliance store very often. Usually it's just a 1/2 horsepower. It's like GC 3000 made by Whirlpool.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, want to go about middle, or, they have a 1/3. So I just don't want to offer the weaker one, essentially, especially when I'm going to warranty the work. Another thing is go ahead.
Well, and you get more. Believe it or not, class, a 1/2 horsepower is, more durable than a 1/3 horsepower, and a 1/3 is more durable than a 1/4 horsepower. So the insulation, the sound quality, everything is better with a 1/3 horsepower than it is with a 1/4 horsepower. So my recommendation is exactly what Kevin is saying. I would say it this way. Don't even consider a 1/4 horsepower. Don't even consider it. It won't last as long. It won't do as good of a job. It will get jammed and stuck more, and it's not as safe when you have to go in there and unclog it. So just go for the 1/3 or 1/2 horsepower.
And don't forget to pick up a container of plumber's putty in case you do need to exchange the sink flange for a new one. Also, where the drain hose comes in is a little plastic tab that they install in case you don't want to use the drain hose from the dishwasher. So be sure to knock that out before you install the disposer if you want to use a drain hose from the dishwasher, because I get called all the time, people saying, install the new disposer and now my dishwasher won't drain.
Yeah, right. Because of that plastic block-off plug or that knockoff or knockout that was left in place. Kevin, as we're talking about sinks and garbage disposals, what are your thoughts personally based on what you have seen regarding a single bowl or a double bowl sink? And what are your thoughts about stainless steel versus the porcelain on cast iron versus the porcelain on just a stamped steel bowl? What are your thoughts?
I think the double sink seems to be the most popular. I don't really see a lot of single sinks, but I do see a lot of really nice, like bronze, or I can't tell what material they are. They look like bronze, like hammered sinks in some of these beach mansions I go into. And I also see a lot of porcelain sinks. I've never built a house and customized it in that fashion, but I've done some dishes in a porcelain sink, and my concern was kind of dropping a dish and breaking it more easily in the sink. But I mean,
that's a very good point.
Due to clumsy nature, or if your children were doing the dishes.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. We had a house in Virginia that was built by a builder, a really fine builder in the area, and he wanted, or his wife wanted, a cast iron sink with porcelain, and because cast iron would rust. So it's a very heavy, very expensive sink. But if you let that dish slip out of your hand because it's slippery with the detergent on it, it's likely to break on a cast iron sink. not so likely to break on a stainless steel sink. So that's an important point. And the steel, and an inexpensive sink would be steel with with a porcelain spray coating on it. Now the problem with that is if you drop a pot or a pan or a cast iron pot on the bottom of the sink, it's going to crack off the porcelain and then it's going to rust. So that's not so good. So in my world, the best of all, if you take the compromises, the best, actually by far, is the stainless steel sink. But we put in a double bowl made by Kohler. And the reason we used Kohler is it was $88. And it was like a $300 sink. And Lowe's couldn't wait to get rid of them. So they dropped the price to $88. I bought 3 of them, for use around the house. And I'm delighted with it. But I'm going to replace one of them with a large single bowl for the laundry area, because a single bowl is better for washing out dog pans and things that we work on the shop with. So I just need a larger one. So I found a stainless steel one, deep. By the way, the deeper the bowl, the more expensive, because it's harder to make a deep bowl sink than it is to make a shallow bowl sink. So you might spend 3 times as much for a deep bowl than you will for a shallow bowl. And an extra half an inch in depth is going to cost you a lot more. So make sure you pay attention to the depth of the sinks when you buy them. Any comments on that, Kevin?
No, that's a good point.
Okay. When a person buys a dishwasher, today you have a choice. You can buy one that uses, well, I don't even know if you can have a choice anymore, but it used to. You could buy the ones that use the powdered dishwashing detergent or these pellets. What are your thoughts and why, in terms of the economics, in terms of the utility, in terms of getting the precise amount of dishwashing detergent for that particular load? What are your thoughts versus the consumables of buying a dishwasher?
When you say pellets, you're speaking of the little plastic pods, is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Oh. Well, people ask me all the time, what cleans the best. So I'm not really, unfortunately, looking at the price point. I don't know the price points. I'll usually buy the Sam's Club store brand pellets. But I do hear a lot of people say that they love Cascade Platinum pods. I don't find a lot of people just using straight powder anymore. I definitely would not recommend gels because they seem to coagulate and mess with seals in the motors at the bottom. But,
okay.
but, as preppers, we should buy in bulk and we should be looking at the price points. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what powders you use.
Okay. The way I do it, it used to be that I could buy a bucket, a plastic bucket at Sam's Club. Now, we've been a member of Sam's Club for 27 years. And it's getting, more difficult to stay a member of Sam's Club because they're changing their business model. But and I really don't like a lot. They used to have good products, and now I don't know who's in charge of buying things, but they're not paying attention as much as they used to. But they used to have in the stores, in the good old days when you could go to the stores safely, they used to have a bucket, plastic bucket of a brand called Wind Fresh, W-I-N-D space F-R-E-S-H. And it was probably less than $10 for a bucket. And it would last a long time. It would have a blue plastic lid, so you just lift up, you remove the seal, you lift up the plastic lid, and you could take their scoop and you could measure exactly the amount that you wanted for that load. So let's say you had a load of, greasy dishes. Now we pre-wash all the dishes before we put them in the dishwasher anyway. So there's no grunge and grime and goo and food particles stuck. They're all washed before with a scrub brush. Then we soak them and wash them, and then we put them in the dishwasher. And we put them in gently so we don't ruin that $135 basket. Well, we can determine exactly, by feel, by experience, exactly how much detergent to put in each time. It's not a function of the pellet, one size fits all. So we used Windfresh, and the latest price I paid was $16. I think $16.88 is what they want for it now. But before I bought a whole bunch. I probably bought maybe 10 or more buckets. I thought, you know what? I don't think they're going to keep making this stuff because Sam's Club doesn't have it on the shelves. You can buy it online. I bought it probably at $14 and change. I'm going by memory now. Shipped. I couldn't ship this across the road. The weight for the price that I bought the detergent and had it shipped from Springfield, Missouri for. So it was around $14. The new price is, as soon as I did that and I bought a bunch of them, the price jumped. They probably said, oh, we got something good here. Some jerk is buying a whole bunch of them. We must have it priced too low. So they raised the price to $16.88. But it's still a good deal at $16.88. And that would be Wind Fresh. And it's powder. And I can put in as much or as little as I want. And I'm not forced to use these packets, with the dissolving, package, that around the pellet, if you will. So that's what I do, Wind Fresh.
I'll try that out. Go ahead.
There's one other thing. I'm concerned about the lubricity of the detergent, and I'll tell you why. I really don't want to have a lot of chlorine in there. I just want the detergent, okay? The chlorine and all these additives will etch off the colors. Like, for example, we have some China Churchill brand. These were plates that Mrs. Finelli and I bought at the supermarket. You spend $10 back in the 70s and you could buy a plate for 29 cents. Well, we still have them. And they were probably seconds of English China. These are really top quality, but I think they have slight imperfections in them in the coloring or in the pattern or, so they're blue and with a white China material. So they're really nice. And they've lasted all these years. 40 years. But if you use some of these other dishwashing detergent products, they have additives that will remove the color. And I don't want that to happen. And they do it, it'll take the color right off a mug, literally. So I don't use any of that. I only use the Wind Fresh detergent. And the other thing is the lubricity. I want that detergent to be slippery, and I'll tell you why. It lubricates the seals on the water pump so we don't have failures. I want that lubricant. And that's why dishwashing detergent is so slippery. We'll be right back with Bob. He's got a question about dishwasher. Kevin's with us in Florida. And Kevin has set a standard that you can emulate. And he was able to start his own business, be an entrepreneur, take care of his family, and provide for them without being at the mercy of the boss. The only boss he has would be his customer, and he can fire his customers anytime he wants, if he found a reason to do so. Kevin, before Bob comes on with his question about a dishwasher, do you have any comments or things that you'd like to say that you might have thought of that you haven't said so far?
Well, thank you for your kind words. In college, they told us that entrepreneurs were risk takers. Do you agree?
Absolutely not.
I agree with you.
I'll say it this way.
If anything. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Yes. Entrepreneurs are allergic to risks. Entrepreneurs look at the situation and decide whether it is worth the calculated risk to do whatever that thing is. But that nonsense that we as entrepreneurs are risk takers is ridiculous.
Absolutely. And like you said regarding customers, I had to learn early on, I can't service everybody. I can't go everywhere to try to gen up as much business as possible. I need to focus on one service area mostly, and even, one particular demographic, not, racially, but let's say I live in an area where there are a lot of special ops military, and they're often not there, and the wife needs it fixed pretty quickly. So that's where I come in. I provide a quick premium service, usually to people whose husbands aren't there to fix it. And I've got 85-star reviews on Google.
Wonderful.
not
Wonderful.
to try to toot my own horn, but you have to make a plan and a model and be willing to be flexible with it, but just be prepared to constantly be solving problems and don't develop a procrastinating mindset or, throw somebody under the bus. Just be accountable and be honest as honest as you can with your customers. If I scratch a wall, I'll tell them I scratched the wall. Is there anything I can do to make that wall better for you? Yeah.
Well said. Bob in Michigan, welcome. You're on with Kevin in Florida.
Yeah, Vince, you were talking about dishwashers. I had a question. I got one here, and I tried using one of those pods, put it in there. What I found out after, running a load or two is all the dishes were coated with a plastic film that I can't get off. So I can't use, I've lost a whole load of dishes, and I'm not sure what the problem was there. Yeah.
Kevin, you have any comments? Do you think it could be the plastic packaging of the pod that you throw in the dishwasher?
I haven't really seen that. I have noticed a film on dishes, like a residue, if the water level doesn't get high enough to actually spray, or the wash pump starts to go bad, doesn't actually wash it off. Also, they make such fine mesh filters in a lot of the newer dishwashers that those have to be cleaned pretty well. But do you mean, Bob, the sort of cellulose wrapper? Or you saw plastics like that were kind of, were they melted to your dishes?
I'm sorry, say again?
Did it seem like the plastic was more of like a filmy residue, or was it actually a piece of plastic that was kind of melted onto your dish?
No, it's a film, a residue, almost like a powder coat on. I'm looking at some of these dishes right now. I got a Pyrex meatloaf thing here, and let's see, I don't even think I can barely scratch this film off with my fingernail.
And Bob, I have a suggestion for you. What we do here what we do is we're very cautious about the use of electricity. So ours has a feature, and many dishwashers do, and you don't even have to have a real sophisticated one for this feature. And that is heat dry versus non-heat dry. We do not use the heat dry. So whatever film might be on the dishes, if you use that heat dry, it bakes it on. So what we do is when the dishes are done, we open the door of the dishwasher and let that hot, steamy, moisture-laden air out. Okay? That's what we do. And then the top rack, I pull that out and I turn all the cups sideways so that the water that gets trapped on the bottom rim of the cups drips off.
Yeah.
And I do not bake any of that stuff on. Kevin, any comments?
Just another entrepreneur tip is attention to detail. Obviously, Vincent's the king of attention to detail. So that's great for troubleshooting.
If you could see all the bruises I've had. I got plenty of bruises. Kevin, thank you. Thank you so much for volunteering your time, taking your time out of your day. Bob, thank you for calling. And class, here's the point about Kevin. I'm not sure how big the committee is that he has to meet with to find out if he can be on the air with us. But so that, it's time away from the job, and he's got somebody has to approve that. I guess Kevin does. Thank you, Kevin.
It's my pleasure.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Cathy's with us in Ohio. We're going to be talking about home economics. And we are only going to take calls germane to home economics. No tangential calls, no philosophical calls. Okay. Welcome, Cathy.
Hi, Vince.
Hey, I just have a couple quick comments to make, and then let's get into the class. And this is very serious and very important, class. So governments, local governments around the country are meeting to determine how they're going to raise taxes. Raise taxes. Let me say it a different way. Raise taxes. And they're looking at, revenue's down because people aren't driving on the bridges. They're not, the road tolls, are seeing less traffic. The gasoline tax, revenue is down. The garbage tipping fee, that's the fees that the government charges to dump trash, those fees are down. People aren't working. Sales tax revenue is down. I mean, so government revenue is down at all levels. So the government, types are trying to figure out how they're going to raise taxes and pay, or cover the shortfall. So instead of doing the right thing and, firing 95% of the government workers who aren't doing anything anyway, instead they're trying to figure out how they're going to, make us pay for it. So I want you to all think about this and, what you are going to do because it's coming. All right. Now, if they do this, I predict, I'm not calling for this. I'm just saying the natural outcome of this, raising taxes, stealing property, those kinds of things, real estate taxes, automobile taxes, licenses, fees, all those things will be more rioting. No question in my mind that will happen. And if they start stealing properties because you can't pay for the burden of having all these government employees on the dole, if they continue to raise taxes and they put you out of your home, people will burn down government buildings. Mark my words. I'm not calling for it. It's clear as the nose on my face that that would be a result. Next thing. Americans were surveyed about, what's going on and how they feel about it and what they would have done differently, if anything, regarding the corona panic, which is the result of the coronavirus. The loss of income, the loss of jobs, the furloughs, the layoffs, all of that, as the result of the coronavirus. What would they have done differently? The overwhelming majority said, well, they would have saved some money. They would have prepared. What does that tell you? What does that tell you about the people I refer to as the GDP? The overwhelming majority would have prepared for this. Had they known, how could they not know that life is subject to change at any second? At any second. Everything was just fine and dandy until the coronavirus hit. Boom. Everything's upside down. So I just wanted to share that with you so the majority of people, wouldn't be taking those vacations. They wouldn't have wasted that money on the fluff and stuff and the appliances that are overpriced, the substandard Chi-Com appliances, and all the stupid things that they've done, the fancy cars, the needless spending. Well, because the money was just never going to stop. Well, it did. And they're caught short and shoot. Had they known, they would have prepared for it. Any comments about any of that, Cathy?
Well, Vince, you're spot on. It's already coming. I have a perfect example. I have a friend that went to renew her driver's license. I live in Ohio, and she has a 2015 Buick. And when she went to renew her driver's license, it was $178. And she said, why is it $178? It was $78 last year. They said, well, you have a hybrid car. She said, no, I don't. They go, well, it has hybrid parts in it. So even though the car uses gasoline, if it has any hybrid parts in it now, they're charging you an extra tax because supposedly you're not using as much fuel. So it's going to cost her an extra $100 every time she needs to renew her license.
Okay, and just to add an exclamation point to what you said. In London, England, they were saying, gasoline is nowhere near as efficient as diesel. This was years ago, several years ago. And they were encouraging people in England to buy diesel vehicles because, well, heck, they're clean. They get more miles per gallon. They pollute less. Wonderful way to go. Then they said, whoa, these things smell. And then they started taxing. And they're driving people out of their brand new diesel vehicles because they changed their mind. And now there's a daily fee. You want to drive into London, it's like $20 to go into London. Because if you have a diesel. Because they pollute more. I got to tell you, I drive diesels, and yeah, they do smell. However, the difference is the diesel soot particles are heavier, And what happens is instead of staying airborne for months and months like gasoline particles, they fall down to the ground very quickly, within hours. So, yeah, there's this fallacy about diesels, and you get way more miles per gallon, way more. Now, I'm not suggesting, wasting fuel and doing stupid things, but I am saying there's nothing that will give you more miles per gallon and more economy than a diesel. Nothing. And so if you fall for this logic of having an electric car because, it's clean, it's not clean at all. Because coal and nuclear energy are used to make electricity. So don't fall for this electric cars or, they don't pollute. Absolutely they do. As much or more than gasoline and diesel. So Cathy, you're absolutely right. And anyone who buys a new vehicle and I think you mentioned Buick, is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is a late model Buick, right?
2015. And this is the first time that they've done this. So they must.
And this is this an SUV, did you say?
No. I can't think of the name. It's like a luxury Buick. I can't think of the name of it. It's not a Regal.
Okay. Well, I got to tell you, I was under the hood and under the vehicle in a Buick SUV, also a General Motors SUV. The engine is sideways, so the engine crankshaft is in the same plane as the front axle, if you will. And if you want to change the transmission filter on that particular vehicle, all you have to do is take the hood off, disconnect the air conditioning system, take the engine and the transmission out, disconnect it from the front wheel drive axles, and take the engine out, then take the transmission off the engine, then disassemble the transmission to get to the transmission filter inside. It's a $4,000 job to change the transmission filter. So buying a new car is like beyond dumb. And anyone who just like Kevin was saying, appliances, you buy these new appliances and they look really nice and sleek and all that, and they're substandard. They're thin. They don't last as long. They look pretty on the showroom floor, but then living with them, you find out that they don't wash as well, they don't clean as well, they don't last as long. Everything is thinner. It's a bad way to go. I wouldn't buy anything newer in a vehicle, newer than 2004. So, any comments or what do you have on the blackboard for today?
Well, Vince, I wanted to comment. I heard part of the show where you were talking about the dishwashers, and I do make my own dishwasher detergent. My recipe is, and you can try it or and use a smaller version, but I typically double or triple it when I make it. But it's a powdered one, and I mix it up, and I keep it in a Tupperware container. And I use it. Sometimes it doesn't get everything off, but I've used Cascade, and I have the same problems. I think sometimes it just depends on the angle of the dish in the dishwasher or if something's blocking it. But I can give you my recipe, and I've used it for years. And so what my recipe is 1 cup of washing soda, 1 cup of borax, 1 tablespoon of citric acid, or it's called Lemi Shine, Lemi, and then the word shine, and then 1 to 2 tablespoons of baking soda, and I mix it all up. And I use about 1.5 tablespoons of it for each dishwasher load. And then I have a little tray on the side, and I put vinegar in there every load. I think it kind of helps to keep any of the buildup from it. But I found the same thing. I found that some of those dishwashing detergents leave a film on your dishes that permanently etches your glasses. Now, I haven't had the problem with using this. I've been using it for quite a few years now. You can tweak it a little bit if you want, but that's what I use. And I get the water real, real hot before I run my dishwasher. I bring it up to temperature. And that works well. And you were talking about dishwashers, and what I do, I try to do it like every couple of weeks. I take the bottom rack out and I lift out that arm on the bottom, and there's all kinds of debris that can get caught in there, whether it's paper or tape or food products or dog hair. Sometimes I've got a dog with long hair, and I'll find sometimes the hair, but I clean that out and rinse that out. So those are two things with the dishwasher. And I do like you also. I don't use the heating part. I just use the air dry on mine, and I do like you. I kind of tip over some of the things so that they dry.
I had a question for you, Cathy, about the water. You have a well, right? You live on a farm, correct?
I do. Yes, I have a well.
Okay. Do you have hard water or soft water, or do you have a water softener?
We do have a water softener. We have sulfur water, and we had to go with a system that uses peroxide in our system downstairs to get rid of the smell. But we have a water softener also.
Mm-hmm. And now, have you had any experience with appliances washing domestic things that you've done in your life, comparing hard water, unsoftened water with water softener water? Have you compared them?
Well, we lived in a couple houses that had the city water. And I'm trying to think, it's been quite a few years now that we've lived there. But I want to say that there was times that I had trouble getting the dishes clean with the city water, but that was even before I made my own dishwasher detergent. I would just use Cascade and I think I brought the Sam's brand before, and I used the powdered most of the time. I was glad that Kevin said what he said about the gel, not to use the gel, but right. I haven't had a head-to-head comparison with that.
Okay. When we come back, I'll share some of my thoughts about water softened or soft water versus hard water versus city water and the economics of it. We'll be right back. So we're talking about hard water versus soft water. So typically if you have city water, it's probably going to be hard water. And that means that it has a lime content in it, calcium. And if you have a water softener, what happens is this device, it's a cylinder, for example, a plastic cylinder, and it has a mechanism, and it uses plastic balls for ion exchange to remove the hardness from the water, removes the calcium, most of it from the water. And then the calcium builds up on these plastic balls in a container in the water softener. And then the plastic balls get flushed with a salt solution, and the hardness, the lime, if you will, that adheres to these balls gets washed off and sent down the drain. So what happens is you have less lime in the water. The benefits of this are just enormous. So, for example, our water softener was $350, $349, I believe, years ago. It's a Kenmore, and they come in all different sizes and capacities. Ours is a Kenmore made by Whirlpool. It's top of the line. I'm not saying that we spent the most money. I'm just saying it's as good as it gets. It's not fancy. It's a basic unit, but it really works well. And that's what I mean by top of the line. I don't mean buttons and bells and whistles and dials and gauges and displays. None of that stuff. It's real basic. But in terms of performance, it is top of the line. And so what happens is if you have soft water, you will use less of what? Less shampoo. How much less? Probably you'll use 1/3 the amount of shampoo in the shower that you would normally use. You'll use less soap in the shower than you'd normally use. You'd use 1/3 the amount of dishwasher detergent, 1/3 the amount of laundry detergent. And you won't have the lime buildup on the walls of your shower and tub. You won't have the spots on the pans, which is the bottoms of these stainless steel pans that you can see, these white spots where the water, the last drop of water evaporates and leaves the calcium or lime deposits on the bottoms of the pans. And you won't have the aerators or the bubblers, as they're sometimes called, on the ends of the faucets clogging up. That won't happen with soft water. So there's an enormous advantage to having soft water. in terms of appliance dependability, appliance lifespan, and the economics of using, 1/3 the amount of soap, detergent, and shampoo. So it really is a great, great way to go. But you'll have to, the consumable for the water softener is salt, but it's $5 for 40 pounds, and that'll last months and months and months. So the benefit of having a water softener far, far outweighs the cost. So economically, it's better. From a maintenance perspective, it's better. It's just a great way to go. Cathy, your comments.
Yeah, Vince, that was my understanding of the soft water. I also noticed it's easier on your skin and your hair and everything else. And I believe it is on your clothes, too. I don't think they wear quite as quickly.
I agree with that. And the other thing is, there is a screen, Kevin has talked about this, on washing machines, clothes washing machines. And it is where the hose attaches to the washing machine solenoid valve, which lets water in your washing machine and shuts off the water when your washing machine does not need any more water. Well, that little stainless steel screen is a very fine screen, and it gets clogged with the calcium that's in the water. So, starting with day one, more and more builds up on that screen to the point where it'll clog the flow of water completely. So if you have a problem with your washing machine not filling, you just may have a clogged screen. And the way to fix that is you shut off the water to the washing machine. You disconnect the hose at the washing machine. You might need a pair of pliers to do that. Do it gently, and then you'll see the screen in there. And the easy way to dissolve that lime buildup, the hardness that was left on the screen, is with vinegar. And that will dissolve it, and it'll fix the problem in almost every circumstance. Cathy, any comments before we go on with what else you have on the blackboard?
Yeah, I use vinegar in my rinse cycle. I never use fabric softener. I don't like the chemicals. I don't like the smell of it, the feel of it. And from what my understanding was, and you probably know this, Vince, that it can clog up your washing machine, and it leaves pills and stuff on your clothing. I don't like it at all. So sometimes I'll add like even a whole cup in a load while it's washing, just to kind of clean out the machine.
Great way to go. We do the same thing, and you can use any color vinegar you want. White is the least expensive. We'll be right back. Cathy in Ohio is with us, and we're talking about saving money, and we're talking about home economics. And I just want to tell you, class, I just listened to the bottom of the hour news, and it's absolutely crystal clear to me that the government has no clue. I'm talking about state, city, local, federal, no clue as to what to do about the corona panic. You can't believe anything they say, not from the top all the way down to the bottom. I don't believe anything any one of these people say. And the proof that they don't know what they're doing is one of those guys had a big rally. And you're going to find out that more and more people will have become infected as a result of this great big promotional stunt in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was the dumbest thing conceivable at the time. And so how do you protect yourself? You stay away from the GDP, because they think they have a right to infect any and everyone because, well, they're me first. So my question to you is, got 22s, 223s, 5.56, 9mm, 45 ACP, 38 special, 357, 12 gauge. Got them? I'm just asking. If you don't, ask yourself, how come you don't? You had plenty of time. Just as the GDP said, shoot, had I known things could go bad, I probably wouldn't have gone to Disney. I probably wouldn't be spending all that money on going out to eat. I probably wouldn't have taken those vacations and bought the new cars and trucks and all those other stupid things that people have done. They would have prepared for this. Don't come here. Don't come here, because we're not going to be able to help you. And as far as white vinegar is concerned, it's a cleaner. It's a disinfectant. You can buy it in the gallon size. I suggest everyone have it as a biological killer. You should have it. You should be consuming some every day. You can put it on your salad. Now, salads, I would recommend apple cider vinegar or red wine vinegar, but you should have a gallon of vinegar around for all kinds of things, washing clothes, the dishwasher, wiping off the counter. But remember, vinegar is an acid, and it's corrosive. So make sure you don't leave it on something that you don't want, you want to prevent from corroding. You can use it as a cleaner and then wipe it off with water. The antidote, the neutralizer, if you will, for the corrosive nature of vinegar as an acid would be a base. What is the most common base? That would be baking soda. Okay. Cathy, any comments?
Well, Vince, I agree with them not knowing what they're talking about. It changes every day. I think you got to do your own research, and you got to think for yourself, and you have to critically think for yourself and take care of your own family. You talked at the beginning of the hour about saving money, and anybody that doesn't have money saved for emergencies, I don't know how you just don't have peace of mind.
Okay, that's a really good point. Cathy, here's our recommendation, or at least my recommendation. Class, if I were concerned about bank failures, I would go to the bank, like right now, and I would get some cash. Now, they're going to think that, what are you worried? Are you worried that we're not going to have cash? You can't say to the teller, hey, listen, I'm worried about you guys because I don't even know who you are and you've got my money. So what you might say is, maybe use your imagination. Say, I found this lawnmower on Craigslist. Do you know that guy won't take a check? So I'm going to need some cash. Or I've been looking at lawnmowers on Craigslist, and I found this used lawn. I want to buy a lawnmower. I want to go to Craigslist, and I don't think they're going to take my check. So I'm going to need some cash. As simple as that, okay? It's a stretch. But you know what? Times are different now. Times are different. And you don't want them thinking at the bank that you're hoarding cash, because that's probably against the law. And the Federal Reserve is now restricting the release of currency. Pennies, dimes, nickels, quarters, halves. Pretty soon it'll be dead presidents with numbers on them. Meaning, ones, fives, tens, 20s, 50s, and hundreds. So if you think that you're going to need cash to continue your life in these crazy times, you ought to get some. You ought to get some today. Any comments, Cathy?
Oh, yeah. Spot on, Vince. I mean, I've been saving, and that you brought up saving the change. I have a change jar, and a lot of times when I'm shopping, I just give them the amount of cash and whatever the change I have, I put in the change jar. I think I'm just going to hang on to it now. I used to, wrap it all up and then take it in, but I think I'm just going to hang on to it just to have extra if I need it.
I agree with you. And I got some pennies. I went to the bank years ago and I got some pennies. And, I said on the air that if I ever have grandchildren, and if I'm alive at that time, I can say, look at this. Would you believe this? We used to spend these things. When I was a child, you could buy gum for one of these. Not $1. You could buy gum for one of these copper things that they don't make anymore. Seriously. I can take a penny and drill a hole in it and make a washer for less money than I can go and buy a washer the same size. Can you imagine that? Now, I was on the radio one day and I said that, and the host, I was just a guest at that time. The host said, hey, we don't endorse or condone defacing currency. Well, I got to tell you what, if I need a washer and I've got a penny and I don't have any other way of finding that washer, I'm going to drill a hole through it. I don't care what the government says. I'm going to make my own washer. And if I need to do it with a quarter or a nickel or a dime, I'll do the same thing. I haven't done it yet, but I will if I have to. When times get crazy, you do what you have to do. Cathy, what else do you have on the blackboard for us today?
Well, I have some tips, and I kind of was thinking during the week, sometimes random things came to me, but I do have one thing that I grow every year, and the name of the plant is called lemon verbena. It's Verbena, verbena, and it's in with the herbs, and it smells just like cutting a fresh lemon, and it makes wonderful tea. And where I live, I have to bring it in the winter. If you live in the south, you could grow it, and it'll get bigger like a little shrub. But the leaves, you just take a few leaves, maybe a short stem, and you can make the most wonderful tea, or you can add it to your own tea. But it is just the most wonderful plant. Anybody that comes over, I have them smell it, and everybody's eyes light up. So it's just kind of a thing that you can grow, and if and when you couldn't get tea, it does make a wonderful tea. And I dry the leaves in the fall when I keep cutting it back to keep it bushy, and then I make tea throughout the winter. I just dry them and put them in a jar. So
and you can and mint. Like. You can grow mint, and mint grows like crazy. I mean, once you start it, you really want to contain it because it will take over. And we actually have mint. We have a raised bed garden, which is concrete blocks, raised 2 blocks high in some areas, 1 block in other areas, depending on the slope of the land. And around the perimeter, there's mint, and it keeps the chickens out. They can't get through it. It's so thick. And it's really kind of nice. And you can just take it and add it to your tea, iced tea with mint. It's fabulous. Cathy, I bought a tomato mill, and I've never had one before, but my grandmother did. Now, she had this hand crank thing made out of cast iron. The new ones are aluminum, and the newest ones are plastic. And it has an auger and a big funnel at the top, and she could grind up her own meat. She could take a cut of meat and make hamburger meat out of it. It's a grinder. Well, they make one similar to that, hand crank for tomatoes and peppers and vegetables. So I bought one. I bought a used one on eBay. I'm delighted with it. It's hardly used. I mean, somebody must have bought it thinking it was great and decided it was too much work and didn't use it. So I bought a vintage one, and I'm looking forward to making my own tomato sauce. So, class, I just want to share with you that I did buy the tools to do this. I bought the jars. By the way, getting canning jars is really tough now. Getting canning lids is really tough now, and they've gotten extremely expensive. They're so expensive, the canning jar lids, that they can cost you as much as a prepared jar of tomato sauce with the sauce and the label all together ready to use from the store. The lid can cost as much as a whole jar of sauce now. It's nuts. Yeah,
that's true, Vince. They're hard to find. Sometimes I've seen them at the store. I haven't gone in the last couple of weeks, but I had seen the whole, like if you wanted to get quart jars with the lids and the bands, I've seen them on sale for like $10.99. And that's not a bad price for everything because you get 12 lids and 12 bands with that. So if you can't find the lids and you can afford to buy the jars, I would just go ahead and do that. But they're getting harder to find.
They are getting hard to find, and you're finding now that, well, you can get the wide mouth ones, but you can't get the standard ones. So the wide mouth lids may cost less than the standard lids, but who wants the wide mouth? I think from my perspective, the best way to go would be the standard quart mason jar. If you're going to just get one size, one style, I would think the quart would be the way to go. Quart standard mouth rather than quart wide mouth. Do you agree or disagree?
Vince, I think it doesn't matter. Typically, what I have found are the wide mouth, typically you get a little more in them, it seems. But the biggest thing is when you go to can them, you can't fit 7 wide mouth in a canner. They're too wide. The tops don't taper in. So if I have them, I sort of test them before I put it in. I'll take the empty jars to see, can I get all 7 in there? So I might use like 3 wide mouth and 4 standard or something like that. But I haven't had any problems with the wide mouth. I think the standard lids are more common, so that's probably a better way to go. But I have heard and I have found out that if you're going to use it with a food saver, the wide mouth lid, when you put the food saver lid to seal it, that seems to stay longer than the standard lid.
The reason that I decided to go with the standard is to have a standard here at the house so that we don't have, all different sizes and shapes, just one. And that's why, the lids are going to fit all the jars. The jars are going to fit all the bands and so forth. And so we just have one size jar, one size band, one size lid. When we come back, Cathy, I'd like to share with you something that I saw at our Get Prepared Expo. It was one of our exhibitors came up with this design. It's pretty cool. It has to do with vacuum packing. We'll be right back. Cathy, I'd like to share this with you in our class. So at one of our Get Prepared Expos, there was a young guy who was a mechanic. And he came up with this device. And what he did was he took a couple commonly available items and he put them together to make a vacuum packer. What he did was, I don't know if you've ever seen one of these, but when an air conditioning system on a car or a light truck is charged, normally if the system has a hole in it, the refrigerant would be pumped down, meaning a vacuum would be applied to boil off all the moisture in the air conditioning system. So this vacuum pump draws. It doesn't push. It pulls air into it. And what this guy did was he took an all-American pressure cooker. I'm talking about an aluminum pressure cooker. The all-American, I believe it's all-American. It does not have a gasket. So it's not like the Presto type. It's the no gasket. It's all aluminum. And what he did was he adapted a hole in the pressure cooker. Now, a pressure cooker will cook foods quicker at a higher temperature because water at sea level boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. If you increase the pressure, it's harder for the water to boil, so it will take more heat and a higher temperature to boil the water. So the pressure cookers have this weight on an escape valve that causes the pressure to increase so that the temperature that you're cooking at will increase inside the pressure cooker. Well, what he did was he took some jars and he filled them with like split peas and other dried food. And just split peas out of a bag. And he filled the jars, canning jars completely with these split peas. Then what he did was he put the lid so it just almost perfectly on the jar, so that if you just tap the jar slightly, just tap it very slightly, the lid would fall right into place. So he put a bunch of jars, as many as would fit in this pressure cooker, and he put the lid on it. The lids were ready to go on each jar. Put the lid on the pressure cooker, turned on this vacuum pump with a hose that was connected to an adapter on the pressure cooker, and he pumped down all the vacuum or all the air out of the pressure cooker. When he was satisfied that the air was all out, he just tapped the side of the pressure cooker. All the lids fell into place. Then he allowed air to go back into the pressure cooker, took the lid off, and all of the jars were vacuum sealed. Then he just screwed the rings on. Is that cool or what?
That's amazing. What an ingenious idea.
So did you follow what I was saying?
I did. Yeah. That's really cool. Know, Vince.
And you can do that.
I'm going to have to look into that. I just read about it. I haven't done it myself, but I was looking online and they were talking about dry canning, and you do it in your oven. And you take the jars and you put your split peas or your rice or your beans in the oven and you put them in your jars. And unfortunately, I didn't know I was going to talk about it, and I can't remember the exact temperature. I think it's like 250 or something. And I think you leave it in for an hour and a half. and let them cool. And I think that seals your jars.
And I can explain the physics behind that. So what happens when you heat air? When you heat air, the air expands. So when you heat the air inside the jar and you drive out the moisture of, let's say, the split peas or whatever you're putting in the dried food in the jar, you're expanding the air, and when you put the lid on it, then what happens is as it cools, the air creates a vacuum because the air was expanded, and then the expansion goes back to normal. So it creates a vacuum, and that's exactly how that works. So I don't know the temperature. I have not experimented with it. You know, you want to have a temperature that's hot enough, warm enough, I should say, to expand the air, drive the moisture out of the food that you're going to be putting in there, but not so hot as to destroy the enzymes. And I don't know what that temperature is. I'm thinking, well, you said 250, I believe. Is that what you said?
I think so. I'm sorry, I didn't have it written down, but I was going to mention it at some point, and I just wasn't going to do it today. But when you mentioned the deal about the pressure cooker, I'll find it and then I'll get it to you.
Yeah. Class, we'll tell you more about that when Cathy has the exact information. So I would suggest that you don't experiment with that until, you can do your own research, and you're certainly welcome to experiment, but we don't have the answer at this point. And so Cathy's going to do that research. And so to tell you what I paid for the evacuation pump that we use for air conditioning all the time, like $130. Now, they've got cheap ones. Don't buy them. They're no good. So buy at least a middle grade. You can spend like $80, $100 and something dollars, or $200. The mid grade is fine, and you can do this. And I think that's where we're headed. So to find alternative uses for the things you have is a great way to go. Cathy, any last comments? We're almost out of time.
Well, Vince, I just think that just try to be prepared, try to save your money, try to be creative, and learn everything you can learn now